For the last few years, there has been one camera that almost every award-winning film has turned to when it comes to choosing the camera to shoot their film on. Question is this a coincidence? Why is it that all the best cinematographers in the world choose to film on this one cinema camera? Surely there has to be another camera that can get the job done, right? Well, that is what we're going to talk about today. We are going to break down the camera responsible for all of these award-winning films. We're going to reveal the camera, talk about the history, the specs, and why this image is just magic. Before we jump into this video, I wanted to talk to you guys about today's sponsor, Audio.com. Audio.com is a music and sound effects library tailored for filmmakers. And I wanted to show you guys how I use Audio.com in my editing workflow. So to do this, we're gonna take a scene from my docuseries Law of the Goat, and we're gonna add some music and sound effects just to give the overall edit a little bit more life. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to Audio.com and I'm gonna look for a track. And I'm gonna choose the filters that say tense and the genre that says ambient. And I'm gonna choose the track Waiting by Matthew L. Fisher. The first thing I'm gonna do is put this music track underneath it. And I'm just gonna play it back just to see how this kind of feels. We're gonna adjust the volume a little bit. The imagery and the music feel like it's kind of working together. So now that we got that, the first sound effect that I wanna add is probably a hit. I'm gonna type in hits. And then I'm gonna go ahead and choose one of their hits. So I'm gonna open up with this big hit. And this is what it sounds like just with the hit without music. Okay, great. So you can obviously tell that they're in an arena. So we want to add things like crowd noise to just kind of build up some of that anticipation leading up to the moment where he's over here. We're going to go back to audio.com and we are going to type in crowd and we're going to choose one of these sound effects. We're going to go ahead and add that crowd noise underneath and we're just going to kind of like rise this up a bit. Now, one thing that I want to add, and I think this is like a little cherry on top, is like a breathing effect. So we're going to go back to audio.com and we're going to just type in breathing effect. And if I take this breathing effect, I'm going to go ahead and put this here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and solo this. And it's subtle. You barely notice it, but it's there. And it feels like it's building this anticipation. So now that we got that all laid out, take a look at the final video with music and sound effects taken from audio.com.
Wearing purple with black trim, he weighed in at 150.5 pounds. After an outstanding career in combat karate, tonight he makes his MMA debut inside the game-bred bare-knuckle cage, honoring his homeland of Pakistan. And now, fighting out of Miami, Florida, King Shahzaid.
So if you guys want to use audio.com, I'll leave a link in the description down below. All right, let's get back to the video. Okay, so what is the camera that is responsible for creating some of the most beautiful cinematography over the last few years? And the camera that we're talking about today is the Arri Alexa LF. Now, believe it or not, this camera only has the ability to shoot 4.5K up to 150 frames per second. And the cost of this camera is a whopping $98,000 just to get started. But the question is why? Why does this camera cost so much more money than a ton of cameras on the market right now in 2023 that can shoot higher frame rates and higher resolution? I mean, just off the top of my head, you have cameras like the Pocket 6K, the FX9, the Komodo X, and the 12K that all shoot higher resolutions and frame rates than this camera. So how could it cost that much more money? What is the difference? But in order to do this, we have to first break down the overall image quality, the color it produces, the materials that this camera is made with, and that signature cinematic Arri look. Now, over the last few years, these cameras are responsible for producing some of the most iconic shots anyone has ever seen, and a lot of this has to do with the sensor and how the camera processes the image. Now, the LF in Arri Alexa stands for large format, and this refers to the sensor in the camera. This sensor is twice the size of a super 35mm sensor and just a little bit bigger than a full frame sensor. Now, if you're new to cameras, you might be asking yourself, why is the sensor size so important? Well, the sensor size is extremely important when it comes to producing a really high quality image. And this is because it affects every aspect of the footage. The depth of field, light gathering, ISO performance, field of view, and of course the big one, dynamic range. Along with the large sensor of this camera, the other contributing factor to that signature Ari look that everyone knows and loves is the color science. You hear over and over again about cinematographers talking about the skin tones that this camera produces, and that's largely because of the way the image is processed in the camera.
And the signature produces seems to me more like what my eyes see than anything else I've experienced so far.
You see, the camera produces a large number of photosites that balances the image sharpness and high dynamic range while still producing low noise and artifacts in the image. And while all the other camera manufacturers focused on resolution, Ari took their time and they focused on really perfecting the color science. You see, Ari was founded in 1917, and by 1924 they created their first film camera, and since then they have been striving to perfect it. By 2003, Ari stepped into the world of digital film cameras, and this is what really separated themselves from every other camera manufacturer. Over the years, cameras have become more and more reliable, but that wasn't always the case. A lot of cameras, especially in the early digital cameras used on film sets, would overheat or just simply stop working, causing films to waste time and money. Taking a look at the original Red camera, for example, it was notorious for breaking down, while Ari cameras continued to be that reliable workhorse that they have always been. Ari cameras were able to film those harsh filming environments like deserts, beaches, and high temperatures without skipping a beat. This is a huge reason why a lot of film companies and cinematographers would choose this camera. Ari has always been known to craft their cameras with only the highest quality parts to create a workhorse of a camera, which quickly made it the industry standard. And when you're choosing gear for a big budgeted film, you want to make sure that the gear that you do choose and the camera that you do decide to go with and shoot on is going to be reliable, and it's going to give you a great image quality. Now, with all of this being said, I will say that a camera doesn't make a great story. It's a tool for a cinematographer or a director to use. And while this is an incredible tool, most importantly, you need perspective, and you need an idea, and you need drive and inspiration to create something great. That's the biggest thing that you can do for yourself. And as a filmmaker or a cinematographer or a director, really try to focus in on honing those skills and honing your craft. Now, with all that being said, I'd like to thank you guys for stopping in and watching this. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Deuces.